Electric audio unit, yes. This is a group I was involved in setting up some years ago, and we are from Norway, and we wanted to address what we saw as something that was lacking in the performance of electronic music in Norway, and that was a group that specialised in spatial audio performance, sound diffusion, 3D sound of ambisonics. Yes, the piece is called He Slowly Fell and Transformed into the Terrain. And when I started to think about this piece and what I wanted to do with it, I really wanted to find ways to take sound materials that were very detailed and interesting for me and find ways to pull them apart and to extract information from those sounds. And then gradually the sounds started to develop in a way that suggested certain environments and certain situations where there was a character who was travelling through these situations. But then gradually, as the sounds were being pulled apart, they were transforming into landscapes with profiles and shapes and forms, so taking things that were sort of man-made and artificial constructs, like machines, and actually there's a sound of a fairground carousel, or where the horses that go around in a fairground. And then how these sounds would turn into the environment. And so then the piece started to develop with the idea of a character who goes on a journey and finds connection to environments and environmental sounds through this idea of transformation, through tearing things apart and then transforming actually into the terrain or into the landscape. The sound materials, they started off as field recordings, actually as ambisonics or sound field recording, so recording sound environments with a 3D microphone. And then that allowed me to take out spatial information, so I would be able to find out, okay, what part of the sound field spatially this object occupied. And then I was gradually bringing in other kinds of sounds from studio recordings, but the main material, it all originates from environmental recordings. The actual spatial compositional process, this unfolded primarily through ambisonic spatialization, and the reason that I chose that is because it allows me to control spatial musical structure pretty accurately. And so my final composition, it's actually in a format called sixth order 3D ambisonics, and it's a 49-channel encoded format. And then when you play this in a concert, you need to find a way to decode this 49-channel spatial format to the loudspeaker array that you're playing over. And so for different concerts, and then I work with different types of decoding different types of layers, and finding good ways to make this composition, which has a lot of spatial structure, unfold in the right way over the aquasmonium or the loudspeaker system that I'm then playing over.
It's a paraphrase of Italo Calvino's title of his book, Le città invisibili, the invisible cities. I've taken the kind of some of his thoughts in this book, which is travel, imaginary travel between strange cities. I've turned that around to make a kind of imaginary travel between spaces and rooms, acoustics obviously, in this kind of music, where I want to build imaginary rooms. So, and the rooms are obviously invisible. You listen to them, and you sit and listen in the concert hall, but they're still there. You can find the acoustics, you can find the content of the rooms. There are outside spaces, inside spaces, small spaces, large spaces, all kinds of spaces. It's all kinds of sounds. It's synthetic sounds and it's field recordings. And processed field recordings and processed synthetic sounds. So, and they merge together. But in this piece it's quite separate sound. They're separated in these spaces. When you listen to the music, you'll find these field recordings functioning as kind of bus stops or small breaks or small sections between the imaginary synthetic rooms. This is an ambisonics piece. It's composed for ambisonics, but when we were invited to come to the Akismonium, I really wanted to do sound diffusion, because I think that's the real cool thing with the Akismonium, the color of the speakers, the color in the acoustics in the room, and playing with that, with the diffusion, standard diffusion approach, is very well. I'd like to do that. So I recoded my ambisonics piece into a standard stereo piece, and now I'm diffusing it with the Akismonium, trying to find the colors, trying to underline the sound which is there, trying to make it alive, try to make the dynamic even more dynamic and such things.
piece is, well, in English I would call it shadow play, or skyggespill in Norwegian. But then I really did some research into the origin of shadow plays, and it turns out this legend is the origin of how shadow play or shadow puppetry started, and that gave me sort of ideas, both in terms of it matched sort of my compositional methods, but also gave it a nice form or package to put it into, and I also created a narrative that I was looking for. Yeah, I sort of started on this particular piece. It started a little bit backwards from what I normally do. So this normally I start with a narrative and then work down the technical issues and so on. But this time I started in the opposite direction and sort of made all the music more or less, and then it sort of grew upon me, and then I found this narrative and it fitted somehow. Then I tweaked the music to sort of fit more into it. Yeah. So that's maybe the original idea. There's two different things going on there. There is that's the reason why I call it shadow play, because there's two main recordings of a snare drum and a movement on a snare drum, and then there is a music box that also moves on the snare drum. So I asked the percussionist to perform, and then recorded, but only the motion, and only, so I used videography and motion capture. So that was sort of a performance that's hidden in the music, but not heard, but only from the gesture and the motion.